Hi everyone, and happy FOIA Friday to you. I'm going to spend the next 5 minutes talking about various things I say to FOIA officers to get them to give me stuff. But first, let's talk about the big picture. We all know that FOIA is a process filled with many rules. Rules that say you can't do this, you can't do that, this is exempt from disclosure, this is not. And the result of all these rules is that they draw boundaries around our FOIA processes, and we learn to color within those lines. My core message to you today is that I believe that every single one of you will get better results if you learn to challenge those boundaries, be creative, and color outside the lines. That's because there's one core guiding philosophy that underpins all of my requests, and it's that if you don't ask the question, the answer is always no. Let me show you 5 quick ways you can put it to use in your everyday FOIA requests. First, get sassy. I had a situation last year where I was requesting some data from the New York City Department of Finance on tax breaks for luxury buildings in Manhattan. The FOIA officer wrote back to me and said, okay, it'll cost you $600. Now, traditional FOIA thinking would be you can either appeal a fee estimate, you can scale down your request, or you can pay up or give up. I decided I didn't want to do any of those. I got sassy. I wrote back to him, I CC'd the spokeswoman, and I said, with all due respect, I'm not going to pay you, the agency, $600 to disclose how much money property owners receive under a tax program administered by DOF and paid for by city taxpayers. I told him, you're either going to give me this information free of charge, or you're going to cancel the request, and let's note, for the record, that the agency charges steep fines to avoid giving out the information. And I ended the email the same way he ended his email. How would you like to proceed? The next thing you know, the spokeswoman calls the FOIA officer and says, just give him the information. The next thing you know, here's the CD, and I got it, and I didn't pay a single red penny for it. If that doesn't work, get lazy and let the bureaucrats do the work for you. Here's what I mean. Over the last year, I've been investigating New York City rents, and there's actually a database up in Albany of every rent charged in a rent-regulated apartment in New York City. The problem is that it's specifically exempt from FOIA disclosure thanks to the real estate lobby, so you can't get it. My request for it got denied. So then I tried different approaches. I tried asking for bits and pieces of the data, and every single time it was denied. Hell, they even denied a request for a portion of the data that had already been made public. I don't know why, I guess they're breaking the law. So at that point, I took a deep breath and I thought, okay, if I actually get this, what am I going to do with it? And as data journalists, we often think I want A so that I can get B. I want the data so that I can do something to the data. But then why don't you just ask for the thing you want to do to the data? In my case, I had a fairly simple query I wanted to run on the data that was a news tip that I got. If you run this query, it'll be an interesting story. So I decided to just submit that as a thinly described, disguised FOIA request. I submitted a query, and now I will readily admit that traditional FOIA thinking says they're not supposed to create new records for you. And you're right, they're not supposed to. But if you don't ask the question, the answer is always no. So I put that puppy in, and voila, your request is granted. The only one they granted. They gave me this chart, and all of a sudden, I had the data that I needed to do the story. We published the story, ran on a Thursday. By Tuesday, there was already a bill in Albany to reacting to the story. Now, if that doesn't work, you should get fussy. And here's what I mean. I was researching a shady bond deal in New Jersey, and I requested some emails, and the emails basically came back like this. They started redacting, they kept redacting, and it goes on like this for 150 pages. Now, at this point, you can basically, traditional thinking is you can either, appeal the redactions, or you can just give up. I decided to get very, very fussy. I wrote back to them and I said, I can't even tell if you complied with my request, so go page by page, every 150 pages, and tell me what this is and why I can't have it. And they came back with a spreadsheet of all things, listing, no seriously, every single page, what email, who was on the receiving end, who sent it, what was the subject, and why I can't have it for 150 pages. So all of a sudden, I went from having nothing to having something, and something is always better than nothing, because success is marginal. And I was able to keep reporting, and I published that story. Now, if that doesn't work, you should get physical, and that's one of the greatest songs of all time. So, there's no substitute for going there in person. A few years ago, I requested some contracts from the U.S. Department of Education, and the FOIA officer said to me something along the lines of, well, if you want it so soon, why don't you check it? It's already been requested in our FOIA reading room. So I thought, all right, that's a great idea. I'll come by on Friday. I go there, and it was actually kind of a bummer. Not only did they not actually have a real FOIA reading room, they didn't have a contract, but they did have this. Well, not exactly this, but they had a computer terminal where I could peruse the department's intranet to my heart's content. So I spent about 4 hours downloading documents, and this basically became a do-it-yourself style FOIA, which is the best kind of FOIA, by the way. I came back with a haul. We got a pretty good story about disabled student borrowers, and it prompted the department to forgive about $7.7 billion of student debt. So if there's ever a FOIA reading room, you get off your chair, you go to that FOIA reading room, and you go get those documents. And guys, if none of that works for you, go ahead and get a refund. I got $110 from the state of Hawaii when they refused to give me something, all because I asked for a refund. So go ask for a refund, ask for everything, because if you don't ask the question, the answer is always no. Thank you.